house and did the Debussy thing?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not the same as doing hairball noises.
Well, you did some vocal stuff. We didn't get that one though.
No, sadly we didn't get that
I've
one.
never heard this before. I think this is more modern Holly.
This is Holly warming up for a podcast.
Oh, is that what it
get
is?
the phlegm out.
Oh, nice.
Do it manually.
Manual labor.
Trigger warning to myself for this
Have we
episode.
started?
We are started. We're so started. You can't see it. You don't get to see that. It's too bad. You don't even know.
Okay.
Trigger warning to myself. This is part 2 of the use of music in cults. Welcome to Schoenberg's Perennials, and we are going deep into the most triggering and anger-inducing material of my entire life today.
Yeah.
Are you excited?
We're doing the, like the Wolverine origins, the Holly Beckmeyer origin
Yeah.
story.
Yep.
This is the prequel to the movies that you will make in the future.
Yeah, it's prequel / like alternative life where like in another dimension out there is a version of Holly who stayed fundamentalist Christian and like had a bunch of babies and still goes to church and all that kind of stuff.
What a world.
What a time. What a time. What a boring life she must have.
I don't know. I never met her.
Yeah.
I don't know too much about American style Christianity, so
Yeah, well, buckle up.
it's gonna be
Hold on to your butts, because that's what we're getting into today.
It does sound pretty funny, so I'm kind of excited.
It sounds what now?
Funny.
Funny? You
Some
think this is
parts.
funny?
There are comedic elements
Okay,
from an outsider's
Okay,
perspective.
okay. Give me your comedic things before we get into the serious stuff, because I'm actually genuinely curious now.
Okay, so my understanding, this is a general. I don't really know anything about Pentecostal at all, or really, for that matter, even unless like the Mormons count as evangelical, but I don't think they do.
No, that's a whole other thing.
So, that the Mormonism is probably the only. Well, let me think about this. Mormonism and churches that I've been to in Canada.
You've been to a Mormon church?
No, I was talking about Catholic churches in Canada.
Now you're talking about things that are wildly different. You're comparing things that are not actually.
I'm trying to I'm just saying this is as close as I've gotten. It's the closest I've gotten is
Okay.
American style Catholic churches, which are different than European churches. I'm told. I don't know.
And also very different from evangelical churches.
Yes, actually. Well, what about Australian churches?
What do you know about that?
So, like, I made friends with some churchgoers here in Canada who went from Australia to here to make a church.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a completely different experience to any church life that I had ever witnessed. It was the whole, like, young people, let's have a good time. We're going to play board games, drink coffee, and, like, we're going to be a community thing. And we're going to, like, hang out at the church all the time. And, like, church is your life. Whereas my experience of, like, my Nana's church is that it was solemn. It was your duty. It was, like, a thing that you did. It wasn't, like, so much your... Well, it is your life, but it's not quite... It didn't seem like it was, like, a community thing as much as as, like, you talking to something up there. Whereas this seems more like... As you say, more culty rather than, I don't know.
I mean, I do think that Catholicism is very culty in its own way.
Yeah.
But what you're describing to me sounds like the kind of the variations of Christianity where they're trying to be cool. We're like, it's cool, bro. Like, we all hang out, we have coffee, like, we have a good time, like, you know.
This
like,
idea of church being
Jesus
cool
is cool.
is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Comedic. And to me, doesn't really make much sense. Like, if you're trying to be spiritual, I'm not sure that has to be cool. Why does it have to be cool?
To bring in the young people, bro. Like,
But
young people for Jesus. I'm high on life, man. I'm high on Jesus.
It doesn't make any sense to me.
It doesn't, and it makes me angry, actually. Yeah, that's kind of closer to what we're talking about today, but but only that much closer because we're deep diving right into one of the weirdest groups of fundamentalist Christians there are out there, the Pentecostals. The Pentecostals are known infamously as the snake handlers and the people who speak in tongues. Now, not all of them are like that. I personally never interacted with snakes when I grew up in that. But they are very fundamentalist to the point that I feel that it is appropriate to keep them in a series about cults.
I know nothing about this. How big is Pentecostalism? Like, how many of them are there?
I mean, in North America, it's pretty big, right? Evangelical churches are huge.
What's the difference between evangelical and Pentecostal?
So evangelical is a bigger group. So evangelical encompasses a whole bunch of denominations. Like, for instance, Baptists would also be evangelical. It's the Foursquare thing where it's like, it's American style Christianity essentially.
Oh, okay.
Just they have different branches where they have slightly different things, but they all have some common stuff. This is basically the inspiration behind this whole series, the last part and this part, because this is what I grew up in. So my childhood was very much spent in evangelical churches. I went to a whole bunch of different ones. I started in Pentecostal churches, and then I also went to a fundamentalist Baptist church for a while, and I ended up also in a New Agey church like you were describing, where they were trying to be cool and they had donuts and coffee and stuff and like connecting with the youth and all that kind of stuff. But they all have some things in common. So Christianity is not considered to be strictly a cult, because the definition of a cult is generally hidden knowledge.
Interesting.
And also, cults generally are controlling enough that it's very difficult to leave.
But the idea of hidden knowledge seems like a power trip, or sort of like a... Because if you hide knowledge from someone, you are putting a gap or a bridge, like...
Yeah.
There's a clear
A
division
bridge
of
to
power.
God, right? There is a person who can give you the knowledge from God, but you can't access it directly. Now, that isn't strictly true with Christianity, because theoretically the Bible is available to read.
Yep.
And theoretically you can leave. However, there are consequences to that, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
And also, there are caveats to what you're allowed to know as well. I think that evangelical Christianity shares some traits with cults that I think can allow for a lot of corruption and abuse. So I think that it is relevant to this series, and that's why I've written this episode. That's what we're going to get into. But yeah, I mean, when I was researching this, I was going from purely a musical standpoint of like, how does music influence the way that people are manipulated within this religion or cult or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But the more research I did, the more I realized that it doesn't make sense without some context. Now, there's a few reasons for that. One of them is, as you say, not everywhere is like this. So if you go to a similar style church, say in Europe or the UK, it is nothing like the North American style, where it's actually like a lot of churches there are very reasonable, just people who like have a community and they want to help people and they show up and they have their services, and it's very altruistic and actually quite lovely. It's not the same thing as in the States, where it's actually like quite weird and very dramatic and very culty and money focused and power focused. Like, it's a very different dynamic. So the reason that I felt like I needed to give a little more context to this is that oftentimes when I speak to people who I know, I assume that they actually know this stuff because it's so normal to me. But actually, most people haven't actually experienced what it's like to live inside of a crazy-ass church.
You lived in the church?
Well, you know, like growing up in it as a child,
okay, yes.
like in that culture and the expectations that are put on you when you are inside of that. I thought that most people had understanding of that just because I just assumed, and that's actually not the case. So that's kind of why I want to talk about some context here. And also with the caveat that, like, I know there are good Christians out there. There are good churches out there. There's lots of people who get into that because they actually just want to be a better person or do some good in the world, and that's why they get into it. So I'm not saying that all Christians are horrible. I'm not saying that all churches are manipulative and destructive. I'm just saying that the system that is an overarching structure for these churches allows room for people to come in and be very manipulative and controlling and sometimes abusive. So when you allow for that to happen, it can, and that can be very dangerous.
Yeah. Especially if they can, people who want to do that can recognize that it's there.
Mm-hmm. And let's not forget that oftentimes predators do look for places like this where they're like, oh, look at that. That's a great place for me to do what I want to do. Those are vulnerable people who will allow me into their life very intimately.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I say, I went to a whole bunch of different churches when I was growing up. But the one thing that I thought that they all had in common was that they all were very good at manipulating you into feeling, thinking, and acting the way that they wanted you to.
That's a lot of things.
That's a lot of things, right? I really strongly feel that they take your agency away from you in a lot of ways. And I think that music is a big part of that.
It kind of seems like the entire human experience.
What do you mean?
Well, what did you say? Thinking, feeling...
Oh, yeah, like everything that makes you who you are?
Yeah. Like,
yeah. They take that away, yeah.
Or
you can't have that.
They
Especially
tell you what it's supposed to be, at least.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm going to try to describe how they use music as part of how they do that. I hope that I can get that across in this episode. But before we get into the musical side, I don't think that it has any relevance until I give some context for, like, what exactly is nefarious about these churches and when they do things that are wrong and that actually hurt people, what those things are. Because if you don't know that stuff, you might think, like many people, that they're basically benign and harmless, and some of them are. But I think to actually understand why emotionally manipulating people with the use of music and sermons and stuff like that is dangerous, you have to go through understanding what actually happens to people. So, like, when I was writing this episode, I sat down and I was like, okay, I'll just make a quick point form list of things that some of these churches do that actually hurts people, and I thought it would be a really quick thing, and then 45 minutes later I ended up with a whole page of stuff that made me extremely angry. So that's where we're starting from.
A list of things you don't like?
Not that I don't like, things that I think objectively are harmful to people.
Okay.
I mean, I don't like them either, but, like, I'm trying to make a list here where I'm actually just, like, being like, this is not okay. This is abusive. Okay. I'm going to try to run through this list as concisely as I can, because I don't want to dwell on this stuff too long, but I'll do my best, but we'll see here. The first thing that comes up on my list is control of women, because that's the first thing that pops into my mind. Behavior, the clothes that she's allowed to wear, the language that she uses is extremely strongly dictated in the church, in these evangelical fundamentalist churches. One of the big components to that is the fact that sexuality is supposedly only a thing that men have. So in the Christian church, they put forth this message that's very strongly, men are very visually activated. They can't help themselves. They have no responsibility for that. Therefore, as women, it is our responsibility to dress modestly and to monitor our own behavior, which also means that if something bad happens to you as a woman, like getting assaulted or raped, it's your fault because you tempted them. Let's take this back to the very first biblical story, right? Eve tempting the man. It's her fault because she tempted him, right? They've never let go of that.
With the apple?
With the apple.
Okay. Right.
Oh, for sure.
Because she gets tempted first and then...
Yeah.
Oh, because she's...
Because she's the bad one.
Then...
So there's a huge amount of energy that goes into controlling how women dress and the way that they move and how they speak, because they are tempting men. There's no talk about how they also have a right to their own sexuality at all. Also, their roles within the church are very highly dictated. Women are generally not allowed to have authoritative roles in churches, the exception being Anglican churches. But in Catholicism, they still cannot reconcile themselves to the idea of women being priests. And within evangelical churches, generally, you'll have a structure where there's the pastor who's a man, you'll have the elders who have to be men, and then women usually take on more subservient kind of roles, making food, looking after children, cleaning, decor. Basically the kind of stuff that doesn't really get paid now, does it? And stuff that is a lot less prestigious, a lot less authoritative. Women are not allowed. I mean, we got that lovely verse in the Bible about how women are not supposed to speak in churches from beautiful, my fucking favorite person ever, Paul. But you also, like, if you go to a Christian wedding, you're likely to hear the verse about how women are expected to be submissive to their husbands, right?
Yep. It's a very common one.
It's always the point in the wedding where I'm just about to tear up because I'm like, oh, it's so beautiful that my friend, like, met this person and they love them. And then they say that verse and I'm like, all of my tears just, like, are sucked out of my eyes with pure rage. And like, are you kidding me?
You've gone to someone's wedding where they said this?
I've been to 2 weddings where they have said this verse.
Were you close with them? Were you close with them?
Childhood friends.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of my childhood friends are still Christian.
Okay.
I exited that because I can't. But I still know people who are still in that. And
I guess if you're being more traditional, you'd want to use the traditional... Because the thing you're talking about is only in the traditional... If you wanted to make it more modern, you'd have to edit the traditional vows.
They choose to have those verses in their vows, man. You don't have to have those verses in the vows.
The church doesn't care?
You can... No, like, I mean, I assume, like, if I was having a wedding, I would be like, yeah, you fucking over my dead body include those verses from the Bible.
Well, I know, but...
You know this.
Okay, I was thinking more if you were going to church and you're inviting the pastor of your church because you're into church.
Oh, you select your vows, yeah. Like, you don't
have to include...
You have a say, yeah. You can absolutely say.
More exciting for the pastor if you use the traditional one? Is there a traditional, like, this is the original, you can change it, or, like, what?
I just think that's often part of the template. I don't know who's making the decisions, but I do know, like, if you have a wedding, you can choose what verses. Like, that's a conversation you'd have with your pastor.
Okay.
Yeah, people are choosing.
Are these vows in the Bible?
These are verses.
Are they in the Bible?
Yes.
Okay.
Verses are from the Bible.
Right.
So there is a verse that says, essentially, and the wife will submit to the husband. I'm sorry, I guess I'm rambling so fast, I'm assuming that you already know all these verses because I have them all memorized from my fucking childhood. So this is my point, is they're all in there, and I just assume that everyone knows this, and I'm so sorry.
I probably know only one of the verses. Oh, I know the food blessing one.
Ew, gross, that's not a verse.
Oh, okay.
That's just a prayer. Yeah.
So I know no verses. Oh, I probably know one. But that's about it.
For God so loved the world that he gave his only beloved son.
Don't know that one.
You don't know that one?
No, I don't know.
Oh my good lord. Okay, my brain. We're still talking about the ways that they control women. Actually, we're not even through the list of just the first bullet point. Reproductive rights.
Yeah. That's a very women problem.
That's an everyone problem.
Everyone problem?
Yes. Well, because men do not need unwanted pregnancies either. So don't even with me on that one.
I meant that I imagine a lot of cult leaders will assign women reproductive roles because they're the final stage of this.
And that is another branch of Christianity, which is the idea that you go forth and multiply, right? Be fruitful and multiply. There is a big emphasis on the importance of having lots of kids. That's your role as a woman a lot of the time. Not all churches are like that, and that is one thing that is kind of changing now that birth control exists and women have more agency and often careers and stuff, is like choosing to not have 19 children is a thing we can do now. But it is still a thing. The expectation if you grow up as a female in a church is that you will get married and have children. Okay, the next thing on my list, control of knowledge. it is very, very much discouraged to go and seek out knowledge outside your church. Going to college, seeking higher education, especially if you're a woman, is really discouraged. The fear being that if you go out into the secular world, your faith will be at risk because you will interact with people who aren't Christian, and it's going to, like, you're going to start thinking about other stuff, and oh my god, like, it's going to destroy. Wow, like, it's as if it's as fragile as a, I don't even know, little
it's like
butterfly wing.
It's like North Korea, like the dictator doesn't poop ever, you know.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, so control of knowledge is important because that is a big cult thing, hidden knowledge, right?
Yeah.
People are and so even within the Bible, there is still an emphasis of, like, there's only so much as a layman that you can understand, and you have to go to your pastor for higher understanding of it. And bear in mind that pastor is generally a man, so it's patriarchal knowledge.
Yeah, filtered.
Filtered through other people's agendas. The next worst thing, possibly the most, I guess, is just really hating on LGBTQ people. There's a huge demand for, like, if you happen to be gay and be born into this, that you're expected to be celibate or a non-practicing homosexual. I hope you can hear that the quotation marks in my fingers right now, because that just sounds like, even when I was a little kid, that was one of the first things where I was like, what? Why? And so also these are the people we have to thank for gay conversion therapy, which is
okay. I was going to ask about that.
Really abusive.
Because I know the gay conversion therapy is quite controversial, and obviously it's bad.
Abusive.
It's abusive, and it's like most people know about it. So I just assumed that Pentecostalism, or a lot of them, don't think it's a choice.
No, they don't. You know what's really fucked is that.
But then how do you get non-practicing
fundamentalist Christians? A lot of them believe that being gay is on par with being a pedophile. So it's the same kind of sin. Okay.
But because you just mentioned the idea of celibate homosexuals.
Yeah, so if you are attracted to men, the best you can do is to just never have sex in your life and just love Jesus as hard as you can. That's the best you can do. So just try not to commit suicide.
I guess it just depends on the specific church, whether or not they decide if it's a church. Because that sounds like they
This is a fundamentalist Christian thing across the board. This isn't just Pentecostals.
Okay. What's the difference between, like, the I think we're going too deep into this.
Yeah, this is too much. Okay. Don't worry about the different denominations. I'm not getting into that so much. I'm going from the outlook of Pentecostals, because that's where I came from, and they're the craziest ones. But they have a million things in common with these other guys. I'll let you know if there's anything that's specifically Pentecostal. But mostly we're talking generally about fundamentalist, evangelical, Foursquare Christians. We also can really give a little shout out to fucking Focus on the Family for gay conversion therapy, because fuck you, fucking James Dobson. They have hurt people, and they continue to do that. That is now illegal in Canada, but I do not think... Yeah, we made that not okay here, so thank God.
How long ago was that?
I think in the last couple of years. Not long ago.
It's a bit late.
Yeah, just a bit. Yeah, there have been lives destroyed. It's actually, if you want to look into that, you're going to find a lot of very, very sad stories of suicide. It's awful. Yeah. So we're talking real people getting very, very hurt. Okay, next thing on the list, sex education, or the lack thereof. It is, again, celibacy or bust. There's a lot of shame associated with sexuality. Because you do not actually learn about anything that's actually educational, you do not develop a language to describe sexuality, which means that if you are abused, you have no way to describe what happened to you. There's a lot of body shaming, like I was saying, where women have to cover themselves up. A lot of women end up hating their bodies because they have tits, and they're like, oh my god, it's sinful for men to be looking at my tits. I wish I didn't have them in the first place. So people come to hate their own bodies, which is horrible. And also, I'm just going to say, especially for women, because the emphasis is put on men being the only sexual beings. As a woman, you grow up thinking that with no concept of the fact that sexual pleasure is something that you'll ever get to have. So that is a very delayed thing that you will learn, if ever. And that is a crime against people, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean,
Stealing people's sexuality away from them is awful.
yeah. Or trying hard to. I don't think you can actually do that.
You can. Because if you develop a patriarchal religion in which women are only baby makers who are not supposed to be given pleasure, you can. Couple that with the pressure to get married young, especially since you can't have sex until you get married. You get a bunch of people getting married when they're like 18 or 19. Good luck being happy with the partner you choose when you're fucking 18 years old, people. Good luck. I hope that works out. But most of us have already learned the hard way that that is not the way she goes. Is it now?
Hasn't been for me.
Nope, not for me either. Not for many people. But don't forget that if you get married to someone, if you divorce them, you're going to hell. Which brings me to my next point on the list, which is the real fear of going to hell. It is real. I know it sounds stupid, but when I was in it... Well, it sounds stupid to me now. When I think back, I'm like, why the fuck would I have been afraid of that? But honestly, there were things that I was genuinely terrified to do because I was afraid of going to hell.
I mean,
it's real.
The fear of God is everywhere.
Yeah.
It's of all the Christian ideas, that's probably the one that's stuck. Not that I'm afraid of God, but more that that's an idea that I see everywhere. It's fear. Well, I mean, it's like, I don't know. It just seems like it's everywhere for me, but maybe not.
Well, where do you see it as a triggered ex-Christian?
Mostly in my language, like the fact that a lot of my swear words are religion based. I tried to delete them from my language. Yeah, like, well, I mean, I was thinking more like, oh, God damn it, Jesus Christ. Like, God damn it is literally trying to send someone to hell or whatever the thing is, as if that's, like, the worst thing you can do. So, like, in a way, you are afraid of it because you're like, go have a bad life, basically. Or have a bad afterlife or whatever you want to call it.
I mean, in my childhood, taking the Lord's name in vain was a very serious thing. Mm-hmm. So even just saying, oh my God, was not allowed when I was growing up. That's why you hear Christians saying, oh my gosh, because like even just using his name, you will go to hell.
Yeah.
It's a huge act of rebellion. That was the first thing I ever did where I was like, ooh, that felt good. Like, ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, next point, the pressure to be the best Christian. As decided by the people in your church who are controlling you.
Oh, there's a competitive nature to this all.
For sure.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
It's awful though because you constantly feel like you're not good enough if you're not doing enough. Mm-hmm. So then you're always trying to do more and then always feeling more shit about yourself and then people are judging you. It's a very judgmental, horrible cycle. Mm-hmm. And the judgment is coming from other people. It's not coming from God. It's coming from people's like cliquey gossipy crap inside your church.
Well, I mean, God doesn't, well, quotation mark here, assuming he, whatever, in this world.
Let's assume that God is less judgmental than the average Karen, shall we?
I was saying that, like, if you don't bring enough cookies to the bake sale, God's not going to frown. The people around you are going to frown.
Yes, exactly. Or, like, if you're not evangelizing enough, which always made me extremely uncomfortable, like, trying to tell other people about Jesus. I never liked that. It was the main thing that made me quit.
Other people about
Jesus.
Jesus.
There's a big... Okay, so evangelical is the encompassing word for all these churches, right? Evangelizing is the verb that comes from of, like, you go out and you speak to the heathens about Christianity.
Yeah.
So the most important thing you can do in these churches is to proselytize to other people. If you feel uncomfortable about shoving your religion down other people's throats like I did, that's a problem. You're a bad Christian because you're not... Because the thing is, if you don't tell those people about Jesus, they're going to hell.
That's your fault.
And that's my fault. Yeah. Yeah.
You've doomed them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they didn't know.
We're getting a nice theme of guilt and shame here yet. I haven't even gotten started. Okay, emphasis on obedience for children and women. There's a big emphasis on raising your children to be obedient, and it carries over into women and their husbands. Love that. But the flip side to that is the next point on my list, which is pressure on men to be the head of the household. This hierarchy does not tend to facilitate healthy relationships and equality, and it actually really is not a fun thing for men either. If you're an 18-year-old dude who just got married and you're supposed to be the head of your household and make all of the decisions, that's a lot of pressure, and that's not fun.
You're not going to make the right decisions.
It's not going to work out well for your relationship.
It's a terrible idea.
It's horrible. So I'd like to add that caveat. Like, most of the things that I'm angry about with Christianity have to do with sexism or the treatment of people who are not cis fucking straight. But this also doesn't work out well either. Okay, next point. The Satanic Panic. I'm not going into details on this, but if you want to look into it, I would suggest just looking into at least the West Memphis 3. It hurt so many people. It was completely fueled by fundamentalist Christianity and the religious right in the US, and it hurt people. Terrible sense of humor.
Really?
Fucking Christians. Because it all has to be family friendly and vanilla as hell. So They are not funny. Has anyone tried to sit through an episode of VeggieTales and actually laughed? Oh my god, it's so lame.
Right, that's Christian.
I hate that stuff so much.
I only saw that when I was like at someone's house. It was a very surreal show.
Yeah.
For me.
I mean, it would be funny if you could take it in a surreal way, but I would just say, like, if you ever try to hang out with fucking crazy-eyed Christians and, like, listen to the things they think are jokes, it is infuriating. Okay, misinformation. Let me tell you, if you grow up learning creationist, quote-unquote, science, exactly, it's very confusing. It's so confusing.
That's a very light way to put it. Confusing?
Yeah. Did it
feel confusing?
Yes, I was very confused because I had one group of people telling me one thing and then I had another group being like, but the thing they were telling me didn't make any sense because creationists, it doesn't make any sense. And then you have to write essays about how you're supposed to like prove that the flood happened, like the Noah's flood, and it's really hard to prove that something happened that doesn't make any damn sense.
Yeah, I mean, also you're not like you can't go and get the proof because it doesn't exist.
There is no proof because creationism is fucking madness.
I love that guy who built a life-sized Noah's Ark in the middle of the desert. That was so great.
I want to go to that. I want to go to the museum in the States. It's life. That's a life goal for me. Is like I got to do the pilgrimage down to the Creationist Museum. I've got to. It'd be so fun.
It would be so fun. You'd have to like. Hopefully, would you get kicked out if you laughed too hard?
I guess we'll find out.
I feel like I would
not. Do you get kicked out if you smoke a joint and bring a flask into the museum as well? Because.
Well, yeah, I think that would happen. That would happen in any museum.
Ooh.
Well, except for like maybe the Bob Marley Museum, but that'd be about it.
Oh, bless. Such a better cult leader. Okay, I'm almost at the end of the list, I promise. Creating fear in exploring other ways of thoughts, religions, philosophy, worldly people. There is a verse in the Bible that's about the danger of exploring other gods and religions and how evil that is. So they really don't want you even thinking about other ways to think because, then your faith is going to be destroyed. Doubt is a very shameful thing.
Doubt.
Yeah, they talk about doubt like it's fine, but it's totally not fine because they talk about it so much.
Don't doubt things.
Yeah, don't doubt. Don't do that. Yeah. Leaving things up to God, but God being represented by the patriarchy of your church or husband. That's the kind of control that can lead to abuse, like sexual assault. If you want to look into a really extreme and awful example of that, you look into the IBLP. Right now, Josh Duggar is getting blown up in the news because of that, because he was able to assault many of his family members because of this thinking of, like, men are always right, and, if you get assaulted as a woman, that's just an opportunity for your spiritual growth, and it's your own fault because you weren't covering up your tits enough with enough layers of sweaters.
Didn't try hard enough.
Yeah, I'm not going into that, but if you want to get really mad, again, there's a couple of different great podcasts about the IBLP and Josh Duggar, and it's very upsetting.
Well.
Last point on the list.
Oh, man.
The last one. And it is the one that I'm going to say.
Well, this is the best one?
This is the best one. It has had the most negative impact on my life.
That doesn't sound like the best one.
Yeah, for me, this is actually the most important one.
Okay, most important. That's a better way.
Yeah. Policing yourself through shame and guilt and self-loathing, because whatever you do that's bad, despite the rhetoric that they proclaim about forgiveness and redemption, actually you should just feel really, really bad if you do something wrong, is actually what you get from the way that people speak to you in those churches. This really fucked me up. And
sounds really powerful.
yeah, like, to the degree where I think the things that mess you up the most deeply are things that you don't realize until after you're messed up, and then you can reflect on it later after you've become unfucked. So I didn't realize this until I went through a very difficult time in my life where I made some choices that other people really criticized and made my life very difficult. I went through a really difficult breakup. And my way of dealing with that was that if I felt really bad, I would basically punish myself by, if I felt awful, I would go out and buy beer or something so I wouldn't have to be sober and conscious and think about those thoughts, but I would purposely buy beer that I knew I would hate the flavor of so that I would punish myself while I was drinking it.
That sounds silly.
Yeah, it is so stupid. It is. But I kept doing it because I was stuck in this loop of self-hatred and self-loathing and guilt, and I didn't realize until after I was able to turn my life around and go into a healthier mental space that I was like, oh, that came straight out of evangelical teaching, where, like, that's what I was taught to do. Yeah. It's like you do something wrong and you punish yourself for it. And we do have a history of that, like that. We can go right back into like the plague times of like flagellation and stuff like that. Like, it's there. Yeah. But they really do teach you to feel a lot of guilt and shame, because anything that you do wrong has tarnished you as a person, has tainted you. So like, it could be anything. If you had sex before you were married, or if you got a divorce, or if you like, there's an endless list of things you could do. But that mental horrible loop of hating yourself and punishing yourself,
it sounds like
awful.
They're teaching you they're teaching you like negative coping mechanisms. So a bad thing happens to you, you do the thing that they said because it's like, what you're supposed to do when you feel a certain way.
Whereas that actually, like, if you're going through a hard time,
don't want to make it harder.
There's better things you could do for yourself than just continue to punish yourself. That's where I got to. But
yeah, harm reduction, right?
Yeah, no self-harm. I've made this a no self-harm household from this point on. I keep reminding the cat, stop pulling out your Ferrer. Stop doing it. No self-harm. So that's my big old, like, master list of the reasons that I think this shit is nefarious, and the reasons that I, to this day, am still angry, even though I luckily made it out of the church without being hurt. Like, I was never like assaulted or anything like that. I just have like some triggers that relate back to that.
Sleeper agent.
Yeah. So let's talk about how they use music to create all of these mind traps that we were just talking about.
Okay. I'm kind of curious to see how, because we mentioned in the last podcast there were some callbacks. They were taking ideas from this. So this is like the original. The
OG. Yeah, so I guess since you haven't been to a church like this, I guess it would be useful for me to describe a service. Like, normally, when you go to a church service, they start with a bunch of music. You do a bunch of singing, which gets you all, like, excited, emotional. They'll have a certain arc to that where they'll have upbeat stuff to get you all excited, and then they'll have downbeat stuff to get you all emotional in it. And then that's usually when the sermon comes in.
Okay.
Or the prayer. And then during the prayer and or the sermon, they'll have background music that will be emotional, let's just say.
Okay.
And it's going to direct the way that you feel while you're listening to the words that are being said to you. So right there, that can be emotionally manipulative. Now, that format is also something that I think we're all familiar with from going to shows. Like, if you go to a concert and you're in a big crowd of people, you will have a crowd emotion, right? You're going to be on the same emotional roller coaster as everyone around you, and that can be a really cool thing. It's the reason that live music is irreplaceable. We love live music, and that's one of the reasons we do, is that feeling of, like, the band is, like, creating an atmosphere that we're all in together, and that can be really cool.
You feel larger than yourself. You feel like you feel as if you are the whole thing rather than just one person standing next to people.
You're sharing an experience with the people around you, and you're all feeling the same stuff. Sometimes you're singing along or, like, dancing in the same way. Like, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So this can be used for good. That can also be used with an agenda behind it.
And that's when it gets bad.
And that's when I start getting suspicious.
It's only suspicious.
So remember that we're talking about people manipulating you into feeling, thinking, and acting the way that they want you to. That's what they're going for. The other thing that they're doing... So first of all, we're not talking about Christian rock here. That's going to be a whole other episode, if any. Again, I'd love to reference the South Park episode, but we're just not going to go into that.
I feel like the difference between that and this is that this one, the point of it is to brainwash and make people feel a certain way. The Christian one is slightly watered down because they're trying to... It's like an advert. But they're taking pop music and then they're applying Christianity to it rather than taking something they know works, something they know that works, and then, like, reinforcing it. Yeah,
exactly. Also, the other thing that you notice if you actually go to a church service is you'll see displays of people trying to out-spiritualize each other. So, like, they'll be singing a song, a worship song in church, and people will, like, put up their hand to be like, oh, yeah, I'm really feeling it. And maybe they'll put up both their hands to be like, oh, yeah. Which is why, to this day, when I go to shows, I can't handle people lifting, like when people say,
really?
Everybody raise your hands. I'm like, I can't do this. And I'm immediately like, I need to leave because it actually really scares me. Because it's a cult thing to, like, raise your hands or, like, you know.
Clap along.
Yeah. Well, the raised hands is the worst, but yeah, that's very, very, very Christian-y for me, and so it's very triggering for me when that happens in concerts.
Yeah.
So also they're usually using emotionally driven chords 1, 4, 5, 6, kind of like over and over in a loop, and that brings us back to, like, the unicult thing we were talking about last time about the loop of something that happens over and over again to create kind of like a trance kind of thing, or
it's like
or meditational if you want to go that direction.
Like if you take do you know binaural audio or binaural beats? Have you heard of these things?
No.
So the idea is that it's this white noise thing that reprograms your brain, and you can, like, get high by listening to sounds.
What?
But they... You never tried this?
How can you get high on sound?
It's kind of a bit pseudoscience-y, but they definitely talk about this idea of... Because each one starts the same way, and they want to, like... There's even, like, in a movie or in, like, anything, you have to... There's a good chunk at the beginning that has to sort of inure you to the emotions and the world. Like, you have to be sucked in slowly. You have to be sort of like let's say we're in this room right now, and then in order to be part of a film's world, or, like, especially in a video game, you have to spend some time sort of getting used to the sort of oddities of it. It's like, oh, I'm looking at a screen and then I have to sort of project myself into it.
Okay.
And in the Christian world, it's like you're sitting in a room with people and you sort of have to project yourself into the mind of whoever is there, and connect with something that you maybe didn't have connection with before you got there. So you have to sort of, imagine a world that doesn't exist.
In a world.
Exactly. Yeah. You're getting into the vibe.
No, I know. Yeah. I think I know what you mean.
But it takes a while. A lot of humans can't just, like, snap right away.
Yeah. Yep, they do this over a long period of time. Like, let's not forget that these church services are usually, like, an hour to an hour and a half to maybe 2 hours long. So usually, like, they'll use this music as the sermon or the prayer builds in intensity. So while the speaker is building his vocal intensity, the music will also be building in intensity, like with harmonies or with the rhythm behind it, where like they'll start adding in like a beat behind it so that you build to the point where people are like, oh my god, like I'm so like emotionally,
something's gonna happen.
Yeah, and basically what they do is they're going for a cathartic emotional moment, which can feel really good. But also it can be a very manipulative thing. Like if someone's making you have a catharsis about something that they have designed you to do, that's not authentic.
The TED Talk about nothing comes to mind.
What's that?
He wrote a TED Talk speech that's about nothing and explaining how TED Talks emotionally manipulate you through cadence, pacing, and then but he doesn't say anything. He just sort of explains it, and then he talks like this, and it gets more intense, and then
Yeah. So it's very important if you want to study any cult leaders or pastors. Be careful about not getting sucked into the rhythm of their speech, because it is part of how they do it. Is like these speakers are very good at building up their intensity into the point where they're like blah 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 blah, you're all going to hell, and they bring back down and like, but you know that Jesus actually loves every single one of you, and he is here today, and there's a whole like thing,
charisma.
Yeah. But there's a rhythm to it. There's calculated rhythm. There's a pacing to it.
I mean, you could argue it's the same as delivering like an impassioned Shakespearean monologue.
For sure, or a politician's speech. For sure, it is a trained thing. Or people who are very good at this. But that's why you get people like crying, having huge breakdowns, vowing to change their ways in drastic ways. You get speaking in tongues in extreme circumstances. I don't know if you know what I mean when I say that.
I have no idea. I just imagine people going.
No, speaking in tongues is basically people just kind of talking in gobbledygook, but it comes from the okay.
Are they speaking gibberish? I don't think it's super important. What can you do speaking in tongues right now?
I can't do speaking in tongues.
Okay.
It's because I don't do stuff that I don't believe in doing. But it's basically just gibberish where like you get yourself into kind of like an emotional trance, and then you start just being like it's random shit.
What's the purpose of this?
It's supposedly that you were like, it's kind of the equivalent of like woo-woo hippies and like automatic writing, where you're directly linked with God. So like it sounds like gibberish coming out of your mouth, but it's actually like your direct link with God is coming out, but it's not going to be in English. So like it's supposed to be like intuitive. You're in a trance where like you're channeling,
almost like possessed by God.
Yeah, possessed by God. So it's okay, because other forms of possession are really, really not okay. Go back to the Satanic Panic stuff.
So he would build up intensity, and then eventually he would break out into this?
No, usually this is a specific thing where it's like sort of in a prayer session. It's kind of the same as like in these churches you'd have like laying on of hands, where like you touch someone, and then that's an important part of like, then they might speak in tongues. Yes, I know. It is creepy.
That's pretty
Indeed.
creepy.
I can see it in your face. It is creepy.
If you were a predator, you would try to become the toucher for sure.
So, you know how I have this thing about how I don't like being touched or hugged?
I have heard about this. I mean, I have a similar thing, so it doesn't seem that weird to me.
Well, a lot of people don't understand it, but this is where it comes from, because there's a very strong emphasis on allowing adults to touch you as a child in church. And I don't mean like in a sexual way necessarily, but I mean like there's a lot of unsolicited touches, and that's why as an adult now I have issues with that because I don't like unsolicited touch. For a good reason, because it comes from people who are just doing crap like this, like laying on of hands and trying to pray for you and speaking
already
in tongues.
A gross sentence.
It is really gross. You're absolutely right. Of course, that's what they say though, man. Like, my God, you're absolutely right. It is gross.
That should be in the rapist playbook, like as terms that they should use. It's like basically the same thing. I'm sorry, that's probably really true.
No, I mean, but the thing is, like, in that, it does allow for that in some circumstances. I count myself as lucky that I never experienced that stuff. But some people did, and it's really not okay.
We didn't come out, like, completely fine. You got some PTSD here. This is not...
Yeah.
You didn't... you survived, but you didn't,
I'm okay.
You didn't, come out perfectly formed.
Oh, Well, I don't know.
Well, okay.
I
It
think,
just seems like maybe.
I mean, the thing is, like, I do have some cynicism because of this, but I also think there are some positive things to just. I don't have any naivety about cults anymore. Like, I'm very cynical and suspicious of everything, which I guess is sort of sad, but also it means that
that seems more like a silver lining rather than good things.
Well, I think it's prepared me to not allow myself to be duped into something like that again. I hope.
Yeah, I mean that's useful.
I don't know. I gotta take something out of this, man.
Yeah, that's why I say
something.
Sounds good.
I
think we should get into some music.
We're gonna get into some music. Before we get there, I guess I have one last anecdote that I think is related to this. So before we get into the music, because this is the reason that I ended up quitting. Is this?
This is
this is my rebellion story.
Rebellion story.
Yeah, teenage rebellion.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, this is how I realized that emotional manipulation with music in Christianity was actually a real thing. So when I was a young teenager, I was a Christian and quite straight-edged and tried to be the best Christian I could be, because I am a perfectionist, so if you drop me into anything, I will try to be the best at it.
Yeah, when you were saying the competitive thing, I was like, you were probably a nightmare as a Christian person.
I didn't like shoving my stuff down other people's throats, but I did try to, I did have...
Okay, so you weren't, like, super outgoing.
No, I was very introverted, so you wouldn't have got that from me, but I did feel really guilty about everything. I didn't feel I was doing good enough.
You were just really bad to yourself rather than everyone else.
That's my perception, although if anyone listening has a different opinion, then please let me know and I will buy you a beer. I'm so sorry. But yeah, so when I was in my early teens, I went to a youth Christian rally that was called History Maker, and these kinds of things happen all over the place, but the one that's in the area of the world where I lived is called History Maker.
Okay.
I went to it twice. The first time I went, I was totally sucked in. So they do the whole thing where they have, like, big Christian rock bands, and they have, like, inspirational preachers and speakers and stuff, and they emotionally manipulate you into a place where you get really het up about Jesus, and you're supposed to go home and become the best Christian ever, and evangelize to all your friends, and change your life forever.
Feel the power of Christ.
Power of Christ, yeah. So the first year that I went there, I did buy it. I did drink the Kool-Aid or the Flavor Aid, so to speak. I was like, yeah, for sure. Like, I want to be a better person. Like, I'm going to do this. Like, I was on board.
Like, these conventions, are they like music festivals?
Yeah, they're kind of like Christian music festivals. There's a bunch of bands. There's a bunch of speakers. There's, like, little workshops. You meet other people your age who are also Christian. Like,
walk around.
Yeah, you can, like, buy merch there and stuff like that. Like,
lots of Jesus trinkets.
It's a fun thing to do as a kid because it's like going to, like, a Christian summer camp kind of thing for the weekend.
Fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds kind of fun.
It could be fun. Yeah, except that the problem is that the music is really lame.
Oh.
Because if you like music, God damn it. Like, can't even. But anyway, so the first year I drank the Kool-Aid. The second year, in the course of that year, I had met some friends who were atheists and who had started to just ask me some questions. Just like, why do you think that? How did you meet
those people?
Because I had a lot of friends who weren't Christian, so because most of my friends were through music, so most of them were not in that, and so I met some people who just started asking me stuff like, why do you think that? And then I met a friend who inspired me to read The God Delusion by Dawkins, who is an asshole, but made me start asking some questions, and ultimately that was a positive thing for me. And so I went into my second History Maker convention in that mindset of, like, already having a few things in my brain being like, and also just being like a teenage girl, you know, you're already starting to be like, I don't know about all of this shit, you know? And so I kind of, like, witnessed it from the outside, where I saw all the stuff happening. I heard all the music, all of the emotional chords.
What was it about the music that, because you said it was the music that made you decide?
So I'm going to play some examples.
Okay. For
sure. But basically what it is, they play really emotional stuff that builds emotionally while a speaker is going through a sermon.
Oh,
So that by the end of the sermon, you're like, oh my God. And you're like in tears being like, oh my God, I have to be a better person. I have to change. Like, it's insane at these places. Like kids will come up to the stage and pull stuff out of their pockets and throw it up on the stage. Like, people were throwing up bags of weed and like liquor they had brought and condoms and stuff, and just being like, I'm never doing this stuff ever again. And they would just like toss it up on the stage like as this act of whatever,
salvation or whatever.
And the thing that really changed my mind is that the year before I had seen people do that, and then we had gone home to our small town and I had seen them just go back to exactly what they were doing before, and just been like, well, that was all false. And just being like, okay, so is everyone that I meet in this just completely false, and like we're all just gonna share this lie on Sundays and then every other day of the week? Like, that really jaded me. For
sure. Yeah, it sounds like the bubble popped, like you saw through the manipulation of the music, and you didn't like that. Like,
so the second time I had that in my head, all those memories of like, oh, I saw what happened after last year, all of the stuff from my friends who were like, are you sure? And then I was kind of witnessing it from the outside, where I was like, oh, I can hear what they're doing right now. Like, I can analyze it in the moment of like, oh, they're trying to make me feel a thing with this music. I can hear it. I can feel what they're trying to do to me, and I'm not going to let them do that. Long story short, I went home after that weekend and I told my parents I wasn't going to church again. So instead of getting all excited about Jesus, I was like, that was it. That was the final nail in the coffin.
Nice.
So that was a positive change for my life. But yeah, as you say, it's hard to grasp what exactly I'm talking about without actually hearing it.
I mean, I can kind of hear it now. There's a lot of I just did a bunch of research on reality TV, and they use the same techniques.
Tell me more.
It's a bit. So, Tantra Cruel on YouTube did a really good video about this, basically talking about autosad, where I don't know if they do this in in the thing we're talking about, but in reality shows, because they only have 40 minutes, they have to have. I'm talking specifically about Britain's Got Talent. What they'll do is they'll have 6 performers. I don't know how many are in each episode. There's a bunch, and they have to have a certain amount of sob stories, and so the shorter they can make them, the more they can fit in, and then of course the more it's just better. They want more, and they want them to be shorter and more generic. So in order for that to happen, they have to have crazy shifts in tone, from a comedian to someone whose dog has died, and then they shift to I don't know, a kid who's wanted to do this since they're growing up, and they start crying on stage and blah blah blah. But the idea is that it's super short, the monorhythmic piano chords, and it's just monorhythmic piano chords, and
that's what we're getting into. Yeah, I'm snapping because I'm like, that's exactly what you were about to get into.
Okay, once we hear this, I'll tell you if it's the same. I want to show you what it is.
We're gonna start with, we don't have too many clips. I'm just trying to find you guys the most triggering shit that made me the most upset. Here's an example of just a random ass pastor that I found on YouTube who is, at the end of his sermon, listen to what's going on in the background with the music with this guy.
I'm excited. It's going to sound so similar.
Here we go.
If you're even vastly or vaguely interested in what the resurrection power can do in your life, I want to invite you just to step out of your seat and just to come up front. We've got folks that'll pray with you. We've got folks that will just lend a hand and pray along with you. There's none of us that doesn't need a touch from the Lord. Come on, would you come right now? All over this place. Come on. This will make a difference in your life. Talking to the Lord will make a difference in your life. Submitting yourself to the resurrection power. Praying a simple prayer. God, I want that power in my life. I want to know what it's like, Lord Jesus, to experience the wind in the midst of all this loss. I want to know what it's like to truly live, God. To live like you said in your word, Lord Jesus. Come on, God will make a difference as they sing. Would you worship? And let's pray and ask God to touch us.
We are here.
Is he singing along with the band?
Yeah.
His nail pierced hands.
So he's got not a whole band there, but so this is at an hour and a half here, so they've built it slowly up to this point. And then you hear the piano coming with the doo-doo-doo, dee-doo-doo. What you can't see in the video is people are like raising their hand, closing their eyes, being like, yes, Lord. And then like a bunch of people are walking forward so that they can have the, as you hate this phrase, the laying on of hands, where people will come and touch you and pray for you and be like, Lord, we just like, no, I can't even. I'm not even going into that. But yeah. That's an example. That's a very short example of a normal kind of evangelical church service.
Yeah.
That, you know what's fucking crazy? People do this at weddings. They will have like the
this
call.
Is everywhere.
They'll have the altar call where like they'll have the wedding, and then they'll be like, if there's anyone who needs to come forward and like confess and take Jesus into their heart, like they'll do that at weddings.
Oh.
For realsies.
So the wedding is more about Jesus than the wedding itself.
Yeah! Exactly!
My special day. Oh, wait, no, it's Jesus.
No, it's
never about
no,
me.
it's the patriarchal
right.
minister's day,
Right,
actually.
Right.
So you can hear the build-up of, like, does that sound like what you were talking about with the build-up of chords of, like, emotional build of, like, I've always wanted to do this my whole life? Like, is it like that?
It's similar, I think. I think the difference between this and the Britain's Got Talent example is that this real musicians are playing it, and it's a bit more complicated. But I think definitely it's the same thing where you have like musical templates. You know, we have the inspirational. It's almost like an improvised thing where it's just like, oh, I know what inspirational music sounds like.
Yeah.
And they'll just like stick it in wherever it fits,
Yeah.
kind of thing. Like, he's doing this. Okay, we got to do this now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I'm sure they do this every weekend, right? This is like every Sunday kind of thing.
Yeah.
So they're fucking excellent at this. They've had a long time to practice this. Every day is a great rehearsal. Like church musicians are really good at playing their instruments because they play every Sunday for an hour.
I don't agree because they only do 4 chords.
I think it depends which church you go to. I don't know about these ones specifically, but the thing is they're really good at what they do.
I don't agree. I was there.
Okay,
I was in those. I was in the worship team. It's 4 chords.
Is it a cheerleading team? It sounds like a cheerleading.
It's called a team. Yeah.
You're a team.
Maybe that's why I have such PTSD about teams.
It's a team. Sports team.
Let's listen to another thing.
I'm excited.
Shall we?
Just when the devil thought he had Jesus trapped, just when he thought it was over,
Okay, listen to the music in the background.
We got rid of that one, just when he thought it was
listen to the
end,
cadence of his
just
voice.
when they rolled the stone, let it become a trap. God said I got to. He set the trap. He set the trap. He set the trap. So God brought you
Notice
here into this garden so you could sweat out your insecurities. God brought you here into this tight place so that your doubts could die and your faith could live.
See how they're building it as he's speaking? They bring it down and they bring it back up again.
It's really dynamic.
Yeah. But for a purpose. We're keeping that in because I cannot even be asked to edit that out.
Anyway, I was going to point out something.
Okay, cool.
This is used in depressing inspirational ads.
Yes.
It's the same shit.
You can lose weight.
Well,
you can become a better person.
I was being more cynical. I was thinking more like donate to, starving children.
Or like, absolutely. It's the same tactic.
And then like it's
like, a tactic of manipulating people to feel a certain way so that they will give you money.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So that was Pastor Stephen Furtick. He looks like he's got a lot on the internet. I don't know a lot about him as a person. He was just one of the people who I found in this horrible.
Is he Pentecostal?
I mean, he's an evangelical pastor.
Okay.
I don't know if he's specifically Pentecostal. Yeah.
I was gonna say, in comparing this to the previous cults we looked at, this one seems mostly closely associated with the unicult stuff.
Yeah.
Because of the repetition.
Yeah. That's what I wanted to point out is like her repetition thing is learned.
From this.
Because they do that. They're like, they always do that in sermons where they're like, they'll make a statement like, God cannot be beaten. And then they'll repeat it like, God cannot be, like, you know, like they'll take
But
a phrase.
the important part is that you said the two differently, and
yeah,
there's slightly
you
different
change.
meanings.
Yeah, you change the emphasis, and so does the music, doesn't it? Yeah.
And it like means gives the sentence more depth and sort of make it mean something, even though it doesn't actually mean anything.
Exactly, which is why it's also culty, like that past thing where he was talking about how he set the trap. He set the trap, where he's like
what trap?
Like, to say that someone sets a trap sounds very scary, but he's reclaiming that to be like, it's a good thing. God's trap is a good trap. So it's the same thing as with Unicult, where they take like brainwashing and they say brainwashing is a good thing because you can make that a positive thing in your life. Whereas they take words and then they reassign values to them within their cult so that you are like, oh, that's good. I'm in a trap. Good. I'm in Jesus's trap. That's a good trap. Or like, oh, I'm brainwashing myself, but that's good because it's Unicult that's brainwashing me, right? Like, you're just, you know, reassessing what a word means.
Oh yeah, because then when people say, oh, he's brainwashed you or he's trapped you, you'd be like, yeah, I know. I wanted this.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
It's good for my life. And then that's why you see Christians with crazy eyes being like, everything is fine. I'm so happy right now.
They have to do like so many mental gymnastics just to get around all the weird stuff.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Okay. All right. Now we're heading into the real trigger zone.
This wasn't already there?
No! Not even. So we're about to listen to a guy, Pastor. I don't even know how to say his fucking name. Have you noticed so far how all these people are men? Is that a coincidence?
Well, I think we established that this is a pretty sexist cult. So
very patriarchal.
I'm not super surprised.
I just thought I'd point it out one
We should
more
point it
time.
out every time it comes up. Make sure you say him very loudly.
Yeah. Pastor
not.
Jentezen Franklin.
He's got a fun name.
Now this is fun because what we're about to listen to is a preacher who's going to be speaking, and behind him is a band called Hillsong. Do you know who Hillsong is?
No.
They're very famous in the Christian community for being a very cool worship band.
Cool worship
I
band.
believe they're from either Australia or New Zealand, but I can't remember which one it is. I'm so sorry. But they're the cool guys, but they do that, what we were just listening to, of like just emotional chorus, just being like, oh yeah, Jesus, but they're the most famous Jesus people there are.
Okay, I got it, yeah.
So that's what we're about to hear. Here we go.
Feel the secrets. Let him send the wind that makes you feel like you want to live again. Get on your feet again. Stand up again. He's with you. Worship him. Worship him. I dare you to say the name of Jesus. I dare you to speak the name of Jesus. You're not in it alone. There's a wind.
Can I? Okay. This, for me, is like the music is like everything I hate about alternative rock.
Everything.
In a nutshell.
Everything.
Repetitive chords, super, like, the texture is just like everything on. It doesn't go anywhere. It's like the endless circle of growth, the shepherd tone, but like pop music.
Exactly. It's fucking exactly.
It's like, this was really popular in 2010.
Yeah.
In like not Jesus music, but like this, they took the Jesus style and then they like put other things behind it, and I hated it so much because it's really boring.
Because you know what it is 4, 5, do, 4, do.
I mean, I don't even hear that. I just hear.
But it's endless. There's no. It's the song that doesn't end. But the reason that's scary instead of just annoying is because we're singing about Jesus. It never fucking stops. You can't get off this carousel.
Yeah. Well, there's no arrival. It just keeps going.
Well, that's what I mean. Do 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 do. Do 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 do.
Just like
do, and then that repeats.
It's like
brainwashing.
in like in a pop music context for me, it's like people who can listen to the same song like 20 times in a row. You could do this with this because they do.
Yeah.
An hour long of one track.
Yeah.
It's like an endless, boring Steve Reich song. That,
but again, the difference is endless, boring Steve Reich is all fine and good. Listening to a pop song 20 times is fine. The music is generating at certain emotional points in the pastor's sermon to make you feel things. Where he was like, yeah, feel the word of God. Dun, 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 dun. And then they swell it. They make it louder. They add more rhythmic intensity to it. They add more instrumentation, more harmonies, more vocalists come in.
I have an interesting question for you. So, did you know that Adam Millie did a video on Christian music?
Like in churches?
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know.
Okay, so...
Cool. I love him. He's great.
He's great. So the interesting thing that he did was he hated Christian music originally.
Great.
And he challenged himself to be like, okay, I want to like all music. I'm going to see why I don't. I'm going to deconstruct my hate of Christian music.
Okay.
And I don't really love his deconstruction of it, mostly because he comes to the conclusion that he kind of likes it at the end. And I think, well, yeah, I know.
Why?
His deconstruction of it is not lyric based, so he removes the content and the message behind this. Because if you remove the content, it's not necessarily bad. I think it's
boring.
horrible. I think it's boring, and I think it's actually horrible. But I think what you pointed to with the when you were talking about how suddenly for you the music wasn't manipulative anymore, and the fact that it was trying to manipulate it made you hate it. So the bubble popped. And I think the bubble had been popped for him, and he couldn't quite articulate that the fact that it's trying to manipulate you super hard. It's like super sweet, or like it's doing it artificially somehow with ulterior motives. It's like it comes out and it touches you. Like the music is laying a hand on you physically, almost,
hands-on.
for me.
Yeah, so... Exactly. So let's make this relevant to all of the crap that I just spewed out for too long a little while ago. Why is it bad that music is manipulating you? Because what is it getting from people? It's getting control, power. You're controlling a group of people, mostly, especially the women in that group. That they are also getting money out of people. In various ways. If it's televangelists, they're making money online. Or like through people calling in. If it's churches, you're tithing. You're giving money to your church, or you're buying merch.
Would you disagree, or could you bring more into it? Because part of me also feels that because it's so manipulative, it feels like there's another force. For me, at least, when I ever hear music like this, it feels kind of like, I can tell that it's the music, but I could almost imagine like someone who's really into this, feeling as if when the music starts and then their brain reacts to it, and they're like, drugs are pumping through them, and like there's adrenaline.
As a positive thing, you mean?
No, as like a proof that God exists, because He is physically coming down and entering your mind.
Feeling it.
Yeah, you're literally feeling the emotion.
Yeah.
And like.
That's why I bring up the concert thing, because I think most of us have experienced that feeling. Like, if you go to any given kind of concert, you're going to have that feeling of, like, a connection with people around you and having that amazing thing that music does, connecting with lyrics of a band that you like, have affected you emotionally.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that feeling, I hope everyone has got to experience that, because that can be really cool. But when it comes from a person who's saying... and now you're going to believe this stuff that I'm telling you to, that's when it's a problem.
Well, I think I was pointing out the fact that they're connecting the feeling of this like catharsis of or this emotional reaction to the music as proof that God is giving them this emotional experience.
Yeah, that's
so, like,
God. Yeah.
He's touching you now. Like you're physically feeling His like joy or whatever they call it. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you're aware that you just used a phrase they would actually use, but they would say, like, God is touching you. God is here, God is present, He's touching us all. Like, yeah.
He's touched your kids, your wife.
No, I hope not. Oh my God, keep them safe. Jesus Christ. Yeah. So I have a problem with it because I think it is used as because to try to summarize why I think this is nefarious, I think it controls people. I think it's a big way that it makes people feel something where like, that was real and now I believe it. Like, I was there.
To me, it just sounds very cynical and like constructed.
Mm-hmm.
Like nothing. I don't know how the musicians feel when they play, but to me, it feels very constructed.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's been designed to make people feel that way. It's not like when I make a piece of music and I'm sort of constructing it to make some people feel a certain way. It's more like I'm chasing a sound rather than chasing a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying, oh, okay, I need them to feel the presence of Jesus or God in a good way. That's what they're trying to do.
You're just writing about people having beers with Jesus. I know what you're fucking doing.
Yeah, that's
I know
great.
it.
It's like a conflict of interest, you know.
Yeah. And it's interesting you mentioned actually the agenda of the performance, because this is such an ingrained structure of writing music that actually I think a lot of Christian performers aren't thinking of it in that cynical way.
Did you ever write music for this
No.
type of thing?
No, I played music in church.
Okay.
But I never wrote any.
Did you did you ever play in a band like this though?
Yeah.
Okay, so you were part of the worship people.
Team.
Okay.
Yeah.
And like who writes this stuff?
A lot of stuff that ends up in churches is like stuff. It does come out of Christian rock a lot. So like worship songs that people get really attached to will be sung in these churches. Hillsong is specifically a worship group, so they write songs that are specifically supposed to be for like crowds to sing to, like anthemic Christian music. And then a small percentage of it is hangovers of old hymns that they still sing, but
like
very
revenge.
little. Most of it is mostly
stuff.
this poppy kind of stuff now. It is, quite honestly, it is the South Park thing, where it is basically pop songs that have been essentially overwritten with Jesus instead of
actually right
sexual
now,
lyrics.
For some reason, what is it called? The Chandelier. You know the song Chandelier?
Chandelier.
Like that has the same vibe as this music. But
Why?
because it's so like empowering, you know? Like the melody is obviously like 100 times better, and they do
Is
actually.
that Ariana Grande?
I don't know.
I think that's her. Yeah.
Is it her? No, I don't. I think it's
No?
older. I think it's older than that. I don't know.
Oh.
For some reason, I think it's Rihanna, but I don't think it is.
Oh.
Anyway, my point is that like the whole anyway, it's just like, again reiterating the repetitive nature and the sort of striving for something. But that notice if is there a sense of empowerment as well? Like you're empowering yourself through because you feel like righteous and like you're as you said sweating the sin or whatever he said, sweating your.
Or you're inviting Jesus or the spirituality into yourself, right? So you're like having a moment where you're like, I am going to immerse myself in this feeling or this
Like charged
experience. Yeah, I'm getting charged up. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Fired up. I think my granddad kept talking about how when people leave church they drive really badly because they're all like, you know, with
They're all
Jesus. They're all
doe-eyed
yeah,
from
doing drugs basically.
doing weird music drugs. Yeah. Yeah. For sure. It does put you in a different state of mind. Absolutely. That's the whole thing. And so like if someone's putting you in a different state of mind, again, that can be a positive thing.
It'd be so interesting to like
Be careful who that person is.
Yeah, for sure. It'd be really cool if someone would do this would never happen because they would never allow it, but if someone would study the brain patterns of someone going like comparing it to like cocaine or something and seeing if it's the same.
Right? Yeah.
Just seeing like how addictive is going to church addictive?
I would say so because I would definitely say so because that's the place where you go where you have that cathartic experience where you start out by feeling like, oh God, I'm a piece of shit, and then you get to a point where you're like, but it's gonna be all right because Jesus is coming into me, woo! And
Well,
you
that's
have
a dark
that
circle.
Yeah.
Because they provide the release. So you're like your shit, and then
Yes.
they provide the release at
Yes.
the end of the week on
Yes.
Sunday.
Yes.
Ugh.
But then they also instill more guilt in you. For
Well, yeah,
like,
because they gotta.
careful
pull
now,
you
because if
down.
you don't follow these rules, you're going to hell. So make sure you're really scared. Yeah. I feel like you are actually able to put this into words better than I am because I'm too close to it. So
Maybe,
you're
yeah.
the one who's like, oh, it's like that. And I'm like, yeah, it is like that. I'm too close. Like, I'm so close that I'm just like, this is normal, but also horrifying. So I can't actually deconstruct it in the same way.
It's a very nice, it's a very effective up and down. It's like, you know, at the end of the week, it's like, whoa, and then you go crashing down through the week, and then you go, whoa, and then it's like,
Yeah.
it's like a bipolar person or something.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about bipolarism. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, that's a tough one. So, the last thing that I would like to relate this to in this episode is a piece of music that my very favorite composer wrote that I think is him totally scorching this shit in a very subtle way. And I think it's absolutely amazing. This is called Christian Zeal and Activity by John Adams.
All right.
What do you know about this?
I've never heard this. I don't know much of John Adams. I just like Steve Reich. I haven't got into John Adams.
Okay, well, okay. We are going to do a John Adams episode in the future. I've already basically written it. It's happening. He's my favorite composer. We don't have to get into John Adams right now, but we will listen to this one track because I believe that this track is him very much commenting on everything we've just talked about, the use of emotional manipulation with music, and then how that combines with repetitive rhetoric from pastor, like with repeated phrases.
Yeah.
So we're going to listen to a little bit of this. I'm going to kind of cut to the middle of it because it's a very long piece of music because I think he's trying to show how this is a very gradually developed state of mind. So I highly recommend going and listening to the whole track if you're curious about what it's like to go into this like brainwashy zone where you're allowing someone to tell you what to think. I think he actually really replicates it well, but for me, when I listened to this track, I could hear that it was in a cynical way, or at least that was my perception of it. And I know that John Adams is not a Christian, or at least I think he isn't. So he wrote this piece of music that he was trying to write chords that sounded very emotionally manipulative.
Who did he write this for?
Who did I what?
Who did he write this for?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
It's from the Chairman Dances album. So it's like an album of like little bits.
Oh, okay.
So there's like the Chairman Dances is like a condensed format of my favorite opera by him, which is Nixon in China, which that's going to be the future episode. Spoiler alert!
It's a good one.
We're fucking talking about it because it's my favorite opera. We're going to cut to the middle of this just to hear a little bit of it, but he's playing trancey kind of chords, but over top of that, he has dubbed some repetitive phrases from the famous Billy Graham. Do you know who Billy Graham is?
I don't know Billy Graham.
How?
I'm supposed to know who he is?
He is one of the most famous American televangelists of all time.
Again, American Christianity, I don't know.
But that's what we're talking about, because all of this stuff, as I say, like, this type of Christianity is specifically North American, and it started in the States. There's lots, like, televangelism is a whole other area of just crooked crap.
Yeah.
Billy Graham has a huge lineage, so his sons...
there's quotes from Billy Graham in this piece? Okay.
He's got quotes. I tried to find a good clip of his sons, because Franklin Graham and his other son, whose name I can't remember, also tour around giving similar pastor speeches of garbage, similar to what we just listened to, of them just being like, really southern, and being like, if everyone wants to come up and get prayed for and accept Jesus into their hearts, like, that's what they sound like. But anyways, let's listen to John Adams' take on evangelical emotional manipulation here.
I believe that Saint Jesus is present through the power of the Holy Spirit right here in this room, right now. I believe that. And I believe that Saint Jesus is present through the power of the Holy Spirit right here in this room, right now. And he wants to meet every need. Now what's wrong with a withered hand? Why would Jesus been drawn to a withered hand, healing all that were oppressed of the devil? I believe that. And I believe that same Jesus is present through the power of the Holy Spirit. Why would Jesus is present through the power of the Holy Spirit right here in this room, right now. And he wants to meet every need. Now what's wrong with a withered hand? Why would Jesus be drawn to a withered hand? And I believe that same Jesus is present through the power of the Holy Spirit. I believe that. And I believe that same Jesus is present through the power of the Holy Spirit right now. Now what's wrong with a withered hand? Why would Jesus been drawn to a withered hand of a man that was in the synagogue? Now what's wrong with a withered hand? Why would Jesus right here in this room right
Why did he write this?
I
This is so weird.
I think he's criticizing exactly what I am bitching about this whole episode. But I could be wrong. And John Adams, if you're listening and you disagree, please tell me because I love your work. I think it's a massive criticism of everything that we just talked about. You can hear that he's doing the same chord structure. He's got the same rhythm of text and he's repeating certain phrases over and over that like just by cutting and pasting. It's not like Billy Graham is saying those things over and over. That gap of time. Oh my god, it's so beautiful. For me, like this piece of music was this soothed my triggered soul a lot. Because I was like, you get it.
Other people can see
You get
it.
how creepy this is. I find this to be very creepy in the right way, where like we're pointing out how creepy it is. But what do you get out of that? Because you don't have the same triggers as I do.
To be honest, it almost, if you didn't tell me that it was cynical, a parody, I wouldn't have considered it a parody.
I don't know. I don't know if I'd use the word parody. I think it's a criticism. I think it's like a shakedown of like, this is ridiculous. Why do people?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess for me, because I don't have the condition with the PTSD. For me, the emotional manipulation that goes on in the music of church music sounds, especially also because I don't listen to lyrics, sounds almost the same as contemporary music
Yeah.
did in 2010 or even now. So I guess there's an agenda here
Mm-hmm.
and it's cheap. They're not doing a very good job most of the time, especially the first ones we heard where it's just like four chords kind of like plonked out and somebody drumming randomly. Whereas this, I love those chords are beautiful. He has like big trumpets and shit, and like I liked them.
Yeah. I mean, he knows what he's doing.
Yeah,
He is a composer.
Yeah, he's like he tried. He didn't. It's just maybe I have to hear the entire thing because I feel like the one of the because of course he's a minimalist composer. I feel like it's gonna just not go anywhere on purpose.
I think we can't do the whole track today because it's
super long.
10 minutes long.
Yeah.
If you take yourself through the journey of the whole track, you will go on an emotional journey. Or maybe not. Maybe I just do because I am triggered by that. But the way that he uses the phrases of Billy Graham with the kind of meditative chords that he chooses, it gives you an impression of something which you can choose to interpret as very soothing and meditative, but if you want to think about it in a different way, you can think about it as a massive criticism of that because you know that you're getting sucked into a mindset by that.
Yeah.
That's what he's going for, I think, is like their whole goal is to, like, I think you were describing that earlier of like how they can suck you into how you're supposed to feel.
Yeah, it's like they're world building your feels, as it were.
Yeah.
They're establishing a baseline emotion and then bringing you up.
Yeah. Which is why I do think quite seriously that they take away your emotional, spiritual, physical, and mental agency.
I just had a thought. It appears to me that one could argue that the church, this specific evangelical use of music, is sort of an appropriation of music because it's like, would you argue that music is a human right to experience it in its natural form, like without there being a hidden agenda?
I don't know. That's a pretty radical question.
Well, I
A
mean,
human right? I mean, water is a human right.
for sure.
Living should be, like, a place to live should be a human right.
If we think of it more like,
Um.
if you take it back to like Europe in like I don't know, I don't know when all this crap happened, but because there's that huge divide between secular and spiritual music and how it's like very different in that time period, in like medieval Europe. So I was wondering whether or not this idea of like, because music's like a cultural thing, they've taken music and they're using it to get a goal, whereas most of the time, like, secular music doesn't have that same goal. It doesn't have a sort of I need to take this idea and put it in your head. They're sort of
Yeah, I mean, except for making money, but you're right. Yeah, the agenda of the lyrics is different, where they want you to believe a thing so that you will be sucked into their cult.
yeah. I mean, if you take like I forget what Chandelier's about, but most like pop songs are about love or like I feel this way about another person or I feel this way about
Yeah, but if you feel that connection to Jesus, and then let's say Jesus is represented by the patriarchal structure of your church, then your feelings are leading you to be controlled by actual people who are usually men, who will actually discern the direction of your life because of that, which means that your choices are limited, your agency is very limited. So it all starts from that. I guess this is my big point. I guess you're really helping me to come to my thesis statement, which is that the feelings are the thing that enable them to completely control every aspect of people's lives. It's like when you have that feeling of like, oh, I feel like I want to have Jesus be the center of my life, you're going to allow these people to...
It seems more that like I only feel this way when Jesus is here.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like I can't feel good unless Jesus is here. Like,
and yeah, I mean that's dangerous. Like if you thought of that in the context of a substance, like I only feel this way when I'm drinking liquor or whatever. Like we all know that sounds like a warning sign.
That is a warning sign.
Yeah. So I mean, if that's a thing with a religion, it should also be a warning sign.
They want to create a dependency within you to seek out Jesus again. Because if like
well, yeah, it's that cathartic emotional experience is an addictive thing, right? You want to feel that kind of thing again.
I guess I was trying to go with the appropriation more around. It seems like they're taking away catharsis and replacing it with Jesus. Like the only way you can have any kind of catharsis is if it's a spiritual moment.
Of course, because you can't get drunk, you can't have sex, you can't take drugs. So the only way you can feel something intense is by doing this thing.
Yeah, because I mean, having sex is a cathartic moment. It's a release of things. Drinking, is that a cathartic moment?
I think so, especially if you're coming out of being a repressed Christian, for sure. Like just various ways of like just either changing your perception or enjoying yourself or experiencing like something in your life that feels meaningful.
Yeah.
That doesn't have to be alcohol or drugs. That could also just be like going on an amazing hike and seeing a cool mountain or falling in love or having a really amazing friendship. But they do make it all about just that one thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, that would be a perfect way to control people. You take, you convince them that the reason you're feeling good is because you're doing good things for God and He's rewarding you with good feelings. So you're not going to feel good unless you submit to Him or whatever.
And music is a big part of the way that we feel.
Well, yeah, it's a very easy way to get right to the point quickly. Because it's so. We can talk about this forever.
It's very effective. Like music is effective, and for the millionth time, that can be a positive thing. But like, I mean, that's why we have music therapy. It's an amazing, amazing gift. Yeah. And it can also be used for evil.
I mean, not to bring philosophy into this, but I did find it interesting that the person I'm learning about right now said that he critiqued the written word, saying that it wasn't close to the person's thoughts, and that like speech is, equivalent or as close as we can get to someone else's thoughts. So
So
the
he
ears
was, like,
are super
plugging
important.
his podcast.
No, he doesn't have a podcast.
I'm kidding.
I don't think he's alive
I'm
anymore.
sure I'm kidding.
Anyway, the point is that like the ears, everything in Christianity is like, except for the Bible, is very oral, right? Everything is speech. They always talk. Why does he have to talk? Why can't they just read it?
Because, I mean, my cynical response to that is because you shouldn't think for yourself. You should let your pastor tell you how to think.
Exactly.
That's
That's the reason he brings it up, is that a book cannot argue with you.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you read a book and you get it the wrong way, it's not going to tell you that you did it wrong.
Yeah.
If you tell the
think for
pastor that
yourself.
you're thinking about being gay, he can tell you that that's wrong.
Yeah. Or anything. And
Or,
it
yeah,
doesn't
or
even
you-
have to be something that drastic. It can just
I was
be
doing
just like,
extreme, but yes.
I would just like to wear a t-shirt.
Or like you read the Bible and you read it
As
as
a
like
woman.
I
I'd like to be able to fucking speak in church.
Or you read the Adam and Eve story and you read the snake as a penis metaphor, and like, oh, it's men tempting women.
Of course it's not. It's always been women's fault. What's wrong with you, Nicholas?
I know, right?
It's always women's fault.
But I
and we
mean,
should
it's
always
clearly
be
there. You
blamed
could
for
easily read the
everything.
snake as a stand over the penis and like, oh, look, the penis is tempting the woman or something.
That's
but then, Chris,
crazy. It was her fault. What is
I mean,
wrong with you?
what's the gender of the snake? Is he a male or a woman?
Oh my God! Wouldn't it be so much cooler if the snake was if Satan was a woman? Wouldn't that be so much more fun?
But Satan's a dude, isn't he?
But what if he wasn't?
Yeah. Well,
Wouldn't that be fun?
would that be fun?
Yeah.
I feel like that would just be a bit more sexist, but maybe
I would
not.
just have another goddamn reason to become a Satanist. That sounds super cool. All right, everybody. That is my coverage of evangelical Christianity, starting from the basis of Pentecostalism. Any other thoughts before we wrap up this snake's nest of a trigger warning in my own brain?
It has been enlightening.
Any other questions? Anything else that popped up? Is there anything that I haven't explained well enough? Because this is all just, for me, inside my mind, just my life. So
I think it all makes sense. I'm curious about whether or not I can listen to music and be manipulated, but I think that's a different topic. Is it fine? Is it okay that I get manipulated by music now? Am I gonna become, if I listen to like racist people? Am I gonna, is it gonna manipulate me into being this way?
Yeah, be mindful of what you listen to, right? Like, put things into your. I mean, I feel like I'm talking like a Christian now, but like, think about what you're thinking about. Yeah, like.
They say that?
Yeah.
Seems very anti. Do what I say.
Well, they don't want you to listen to anything that isn't Christian, right? So like whatever you're putting into your vessel is important, but basically, if you're in a situation where you feel like it's just not true to you and you just don't feel right in it, please do ask those questions. If people are trying to tell you to do things that just do not feel like yourself, please do start thinking about that. That was the beginning of my thoughts about this. I mean, honestly, like, if being a Christian is what makes you feel okay about being alive, then great. Do that. Be the best person you can. But just be careful about these cult leaders. Be careful about who you give money to.
Yeah.
Make sure that you make your choices based on what makes you happy, not on what other people tell you are supposed to do.
Don't create dependencies in other people.
Yeah. I mean, that's the big thing, is like, my structure was, I'm afraid of going to hell, so I will do what people tell me to do because I'm scared of the alternative. And then when I was able to get out of that, I realized how much happier I was just doing things that made me happy, because that's not the person I am. I'm not a subservient, submissive woman. I never was. And I'm never going to be that. And that was always going to be a really difficult line to walk for me. So that's where I'm at with this. If you're in that situation and you feel uncomfortable about it, please please get out and live your life and enjoy yourself. This is the life that we get to have. We don't know if there's a heaven out there or a hell. We just get this one. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty sad.
Yeah. Enjoy yourself. It's a short lifetime, and yeah.
Yeah, it's getting faster and faster every day.
Yeah. So, and if Jesus works for you, then I'm on board with that dude. He's a cool dude. It's just it's the people who took him and made him something else that I'm not okay with.
Do you wish you had had this realization sooner in your life?
I had it pretty early.
Well, I know, but like,
This is like when I was 14.
Well, I know, but does it feel like, oh no, I've missed out on my something that No, you're not that way? Okay.
No.
Okay. I was just curious.
The only thing I missed out on was watching The Simpsons. And I'm making up for that right now. So it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You probably get more jokes anyway now.
Yeah. And I also missed out on having a non-confusing science education because I had to go from creationism into evolution, which was genuinely confusing.
That's very jarring.
Yeah. Those are the only two things where I'm like, all right, I got to rectify that now and educate myself on culture and science. I never even got into, we went into all this. I meant to also go into how they brainwash children into believing in creationism because there was actually a song about how evolution is not real. I meant to go into that, and we do not have time now, but there is a song about that, just like there's a song about the books of the Bible. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, we could keep, we're not going to do this, but it
All
goes
right.
on.
I have many comments, but yes.
Yeah.
I think that was pretty good.
We did it. We got through it. The most triggering episode of all time.
Part
2, yes. Please get in touch with us. We are Schoenberg's Perennials. We have an email address of that title that you can email us at, schoenbergsperennials@gmail.com. We have an Instagram page. Please get in touch with us.
Yeah, if you feel like leaving your cult or you have questions, let us know. We'll help you transition.
Yeah, if you want some support for getting out of it.
Yeah, we can call the police. We can do other things too.
We can't do that.
We can't call the police?
I don't think you need to do that, actually.
I don't know. I don't know how intense these are. I wasn't in one, so I don't know.
Yeah. Anyways, you can also find us both on various strange streaming platforms.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Holly Beckmeyer.
I am Nicholas Marriott. Or Nicholas Grainwing Marriott. It's pretty fun.
Yeah. And you have a band?
Oh, yeah, I have a band. We make country music. We had a song called Drinking Beer with Jesus.
Drinking beer with
Or
Jesus.
Having a Beer with Jesus.
Having a beer. See,
And it's all about the...
this is the thing. Like, Christians always have dry weddings. Like, they have, like, juice and shit. And it's like, dudes, Jesus has a story in the Bible about how he turned barrels of water into wine at a wedding.
It was a
My
wedding?
dudes, it was a wedding.
It was a wedding, wow.
Yeah, for sure. He went, like Jesus is all about actually enjoying yourself.
So, any Jesus people out there, drink your wine. Jesus approves. Jesus approves.
Do whatever you want, but make sure it's what you want. Make sure it's not something someone
And if you don't
in
know
your
what you
church
want,
told
try to figure it
you
out.
should want. Don't let people tell you what you're supposed to want. Or
I mean, if you don't want anything, that's fine. You don't have to want things.
You don't have to. You don't have to want anything. But I'm just saying, like, don't let other people choose your choices. That's the thing. Is like in the church, like they make a lot of choices for you. You're supposed to have babies. You're supposed to have this kind of career. You're supposed to be this kind of person.
Not to make this any longer, but I've experienced somebody who was in a sort of abusive relationship. One thing I noticed was that afterwards, they had a hard time having opinions. And it sort of took them a while to sort of deprogram themselves into wanting things because they spent so long not wanting things. Did you have to go through that where you sort of didn't have an opinion?
Yeah.
Is this triggering?
Yeah, no, it's awful. Like it's interesting how similar abusive relationships are to abusive leadership experiences, like churches, where people are gaslighting you and telling you what
what you
what
want.
you're feeling, what you want, what you feel. They're telling you what that is, and that's why I say that it is a form of abuse, because it's taking people's own agency away from them.
Yeah.
It's very comparable to an abusive relationship.
All right.
Yeah.
On that note,
Oh.
let's not abuse your time with an extremely long podcast.
Thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with something that is possibly less.
I think anything is lighter than this.
All right.
Right?
I
At
guess.
least for you, anyway.
Yeah. All right. Hopefully the listeners enjoyed. But anyways.
Goodbye.
Bye!